And welcome everyone to the second half of our Thursday high vibe channeling session. Thank you all for this co-creation, adding your energy and your wit and wisdom. Tonight we are pleased to have one of our favorites and a entity and energy and exceptional human being who has thrilled us many, many times before. And Chuck, if you have anything else that you would like to ask, please do so. And otherwise, we will wait here patiently for the grace and wisdom which come through.
Wow. Ah, that's what do you call those people when individuals going out on stage, they come and introduce you, you know? You must have another incarnation where you do that, several possibly. Oh, craziness. Well, it's great to see all you guys. Anthony, nice to see you again.
Likewise. And hit me up in the chat if anyone has a question, obviously.
We'd once again greet all of you. And as we have in the past, express our appreciation for the opportunity, we could say, to collaborate with you in this way, to share with all of you in this way, because of course it adds to our exploration in ways that without our interactions, we would not have available to us. So it is appreciated by you. Bruce's song and the subject of it are quite apropos in the moment. It is, of course, after all, a time where you're all leaning more into yourselves, becoming increasingly familiar with what that means. You've used in your terms over the course of time many terms, many ideas, many names to express what essentially is your own energy. And because of your experience, your physical experience, many times you project that energy outside of yourself. You look to something out there that contains the wisdom that you seek, the wisdom that the rest of you during this shifting period of yours, during this transition period of yours, is helping you to understand has always been yours. It shows up symbolically, metaphorically, in many different ways. And the individuals that share your experience in consciousness will lend their energies and they'll utilize the themes and the ideas that those of you who are expressing themselves within this physical dimension like to use as you allow that information, that knowledge, that awareness to show up for you in your interactions and to help you to open yourself, perhaps we'll say, to all of what lies within you in that regard. There can be, as you do this, the tendency on occasion, as has happened in the past, not only in the past, but in your present, it is also very prevalent, but to believe it is the symbols that have the ability and the wisdom and the knowledge, when in fact, that is what they are. They are symbols, they are metaphors, they are expressions of you in other dimensions, but they are you. Because, of course, the dimensions that you hold within yourself are without number. And the expressions that you have of yourself within those dimensions are likewise without number. Some of them express themselves in bodily shapes, similar in some ways to what you do here. Some do not at all. And when you translate their energy, because of your experience here, you give them form and shape because that is familiar to you. It makes it easier for you to listen to their message because there is a commonality there. The point, if we can use that word, of this transition period of yours, however, even though it is helpful to have those individuals that are around you constantly to provide you with information and guide you, they all have the same goal. And that goal is your own awareness of yourself, your own awareness that within you, all this information is yours. There is, in fact, no aspect of consciousness that contains more than information than you do. So deep trust in yourself is what is being asked of you in this moment. And really, all you need to do is to live your life in your terms day after day, to understand where within your life it would be worth your time to probe a little deeper. Because those moments will show up for you as you live your day. You will find yourself uncomfortable or responding in ways where you may say, this would have been better, or that's bad, or this individual expressed themselves in a way that was not correctly. Any kind of a judgmentalism about another's choice, another's decision in any way, shape, or form will help you to identify a movement within yourself that still identifies with your historical, perhaps we'll say, experience. It's quite common for you still, and there's nothing wrong with this, for you to identify yourself as a human being. The challenge with that is that you've had ideas about what that means, and you're moving beyond all those ideas right now. You're all aware that you have really numberless aspects of yourself that you're exchanging information with and experiences with all the time, perpetually. It's a very difficult thing for most individuals that express themselves physically to have much of an understanding at all as far as what all those interactions are, how all your experiences are intertwined and flow together to help in the totality of what all of you are doing, to observe and experience in your situation, and to apply quote unquote common judgment to it, you will find to be a hindrance to your expansion into more of what you are, because you cannot see the fullness of what it is that's going on. You will think in terms, of course, of perhaps harm or hurtfulness that are being applied or coming to others. But as eternal beings, that can never be true, of course. Many individuals who have been on your planet, many individuals that are on your planet, and in terms of time, many individuals who will be on your planet for a little while yet, because before too long this will no longer be necessary, will put themselves in positions that seem to be sacrificial, to be helpful for everybody else, to stimulate movement within everybody else, so that all of you can move one step closer to a deeper awareness of who and what you are. It is a very challenging thing to know with certainty that it is you that's creating the entirety of your experience. It's very difficult in your position not to believe that the individuals that you're interacting with are actual separate individuals. It's very difficult to believe that when you see somebody walk across the street and they get hit by a car and they quote unquote die, that a separate individual has had this experience that's outside of you, that has occurred, that has caused this individual to, for many individuals, lose their existence. This, of course, is not what has gone on. You've created a scenario very much in line with the belief systems that you hold in this place. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course. The idea, however, is that within this time period of yours, within your transition, within your shift, one of the most powerful things that you will do is you will understand that the filter that you've been living your lives through are your belief systems. You'll come to understand how very powerful they can be. But in your understanding of yourself, you'll begin to understand them as the tools that they are to have the experience that you're having. At that moment, you'll become like the artist with the palette of paints on their hand, who's gone from painting with their eyes closed to painting with their eyes open. You will now choose the colors with an awareness that you would like to use to paint your picture. You will no longer just be running your brush across the palette, not knowing which colors you're mixing, or many times what it is you're actually painting on the canvas. This is what your shifting time is allowing you to do, to understand how it is you use the paints that you use to create your canvas of your life. There's never been anything wrong with the method that you were utilizing. You're only now moving into a different method, a method where you will have a large chunk of your awareness as the self while you're having your physical experience. Of course, in terms of time, the you that you will experience when you make that shift is a you that's already been there having that experience. You, of course, will just shift your attention to a different expression of yourself. But within alignment of the themes that you utilize in your experience, you will use a process to do that. So trusting yourself is a very important part of all of this. Acceptance of not only your expressions, but of everybody else's expressions will also be important for your movement. Realize that nothing that you do will affect anybody else's movement. It's only their acceptance of things that will affect what they choose to do with their energies. Can also be a difficult situation sometimes, especially when challenging situations show up, to again forget that nobody else brought that challenge to you. You brought that challenge to yourself, regardless of what it is. So when an individual is challenged in that way, the more you can pause and ask yourself, so why have I experienced this? Why have I experienced this? What has come up for me as I've experienced this? That's where the potential for your own movement will be the greatest. If you look to others in any way as who it was that reached out and did something in your reality, we will suggest that will not be as effective. You can still, in some ways, explore beliefs when you do that, but you will have muddied the water a little bit, and you won't quite see clearly as to what that experience was about. Always go back to yourself. Always ask yourself, why did I create this situation for myself? How did I feel as I had that experience? You'll understand what is left yet to address, what is yet to be moved through, to be understood more fully, because we'll suggest to you that when you have gotten to a place within yourself that you understand your immutable, infinite, and we'll add this word within the context of what we're talking about, unharmable self, you will no longer see yourself in any way, shape, or form as a victim. You will understand that you create your scenarios for reasons that flow into the creation that you've associated yourself with in that moment, and that help you to understand within this time period deeper awarenesses of yourself. Though it can be challenging many times to do that. And there's nothing wrong with it being challenging in the moment. So attempt to trust yourself as much as you possibly can. Attempt to trust your situations as much as you possibly can. Attempt to understand that your experiences are your experiences. You really don't have any idea how anybody else, quote unquote, is experiencing what it is that you're experiencing. Unless you are, and we're going to use these words, quite advanced in your understanding of self. And if you are, there are no questions anyway. So understand the questions that you ask about your challenges, about the experiences that you had, they should be your questions to yourself about your movement. Otherwise, the answers that you get back will not show you a clear path to your movement. They will show you a path that has shadow that falls across it. You won't see the path clearly. So we'll pause at that moment and see if there's clarification, if there's questions, if there's other directions that somebody would like.
Thank you to say to Anthony's going to lead us off.
Thank you.
Hello, my good friend.
It's a pleasure to meet this version of. Are you related to Chuck, or does he just have a bond with you?
We are, as other individuals have expressed, we are what you would express from your vantage point, that more encompassing aspect of the individual that you call Chuck, the personality that you call Chuck.
Right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. And what came to me to ask is if a person is choosing to be in alignment most hours of the day or most minutes of the day, even, but they're on this planet at this time, what type of challenges might they experience? What I know it's a very subjective thing, but what type of challenges even arise for someone if they're choosing to be in alignment most of the time, and what does that feel like?
So many times when the word is used, challenges, there's a way that individuals who've had what they perceive to be negative experiences, they use the word challenges. However, perhaps in our answer, we could rephrase the word, use a different word, and it suggests instead experiences. So, an individual finding themselves here who finds themselves in what you may call alignment largely while they're here, they will still have many new experiences. They may not, within the context of how that word is typically used, challenges, they may not find it challenging in the way that many individuals who've been more immersed in the physical experience may recognize that word to perhaps express. But there will be newness. They will be having new experiences as they interact with the individuals and the energies around them. They will be experiencing things from their perspective that are fresh for them. And so, again, not so much challenges in the way that many of you might think of them, but definitely experiences, new experiences, if that's helpful for you. And we could go another direction if there is something else you would like to add.
Thank you. Yes, that's very helpful. And I wanted to ask, so does the newness always have some element of forcing the individual to probe deeper and scratch their head and go deeper, or is there ever a point where it just becomes completely easy?
So, if you recall, many have said this, and we will echo their words. Consciousness is in a state of continual and perpetual exploration of itself. It never ends. So, your idea of scratching the head and looking for something new, something different, is an infinite thing. It will never be tied up, shall we say. There will be no ending to it. So, what you do as the infinite you is, and we're going to talk in terms of a relatively focused aspect of yourself. In this place, in physical dimensions, because when you enter into physical dimensions, and again, we're using time in a way here, you don't enter into one physical dimension. You enter into all physical dimensions. You experience the idea of physical dimensions, and you experience all of them as whatever you would like to say, the oversoul, the essence, the entity. You experience all of them when you choose to explore physical dimensions. And so what you're looking for is experience in a way that, from your vantage point right now, really doesn't even make sense, because there is so much activity that's going on, so much interchange that's going on. Consciousness, you must remember, is action. It is movement. Consciousness is not a thing. It is an action. It's an expression. It's a continual expression. it's difficult to understand the dynamicism of consciousness. There is no point where consciousness is static. Consciousness is always moving, always shifting. You sequester yourself from much of that when you have these types of experiences. And there's nothing, of course, wrong with that. In fact, the vantage point that you have, the way that you're asking your question right now, the direction that your question flows from is in itself its own exploration of consciousness. So, consciousness is always exploring. You, as an expression of consciousness, are always exploring. You've chosen this particular idea, this particular theme, physicality, as one of your explorations. You've chose, perhaps more accurately, we could say, to bring your attention to this direction of your exploration, physicality. So in that, even though within your experiences, there are themes that you develop, there are ways, ideas that you can explore. But within that, there's a great deal of flexibility. So, regardless of where somebody is in their awareness of self, while they're within the experience, the exploration, the experience of the exploration is no more valid for one than for the other. It's only different. It all contributes to the all of consciousness. It can't help but, because of course everything flows together. Is there a direction that I can take that helps a little bit with something that perhaps we're not quite hooking for you?
Well, it reminds me of an Abraham Hicks quote where Abraham says, if you're a perfectionist, then bliss will always feel just 1 foot away from you because you have to enjoy not the mastery of the thing, but just the thing itself.
Because mastery means there's an end. There is never an end. There cannot be mastery. Mastery means you've arrived someplace. Consciousness never arrives anywhere. It's a continual exploration of self. We'll just put it basically that way. There is no ending point you will ever come to. Mastery means there's a subject matter and I can know it as deeply as possible. That is not possible.
Yeah, I've heard this many times, and I can get very, very personal, very, very briefly before I hand the mic off, and just say that as a little infant, I came to the conclusion that this planet, and I know this is a wrong conclusion, but I had the opinion at the time that the planet was not safe. But I thought that if I was an outlier in all regards in terms of talent, I could create a safe life for myself. So I strove to be an intellectual outlier, have very safe finances, have strong friendships, thinking I could game the system by just being very high performance. But I've found that even though I now have a life of abundance, I'm always exhausted from attempting to keep perfecting everything in order to maintain this abundance, even though I know from the spiritual teachings it's just from allowance, not from perfectionism. But I just keep choosing again and again to go for the illusion of perfectionism rather than allowance.
You did like many here did. You convinced yourself very strongly that it was your exterior environment that had the effect on your existence and not you. Is this understood?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So
This is
here's
important for you in this moment. That's what you convinced yourself of at that time in a very powerful way, that you were not the one that configured your existence. It was your existence that was configuring your life for you. In
right.
your
So
shifting period now, your shifting period now, you're letting go of that a little at a time. As you do that, you will find yourself more and more comfortable in the idea that you developed when you were quote unquote young. It's trust in yourself right now that will be paramount.
I think my frustration with existence is I sometimes feel that like the law of attraction is like too strict. Like I understand that if we're out of alignment, we'll get commensurate experiences, but I sometimes wish that I could be a little bit more out of alignment before it starts to bite me in the butt. It feels like I have to be very much in alignment all the time in order to get uh, experience that doesn't have pain in it. And it seems that this planet has that, where you see people getting in car accidents and their arms blown off, and even if that's like the perfect thing for them, it just seems like alignment is like I understand when Bashar says the masters of limitation, because it feels like we have to be so good about our alignment before pain can uh, not come in.
Different individuals have those experiences, of course, for different reasons. And we're starting very vaguely here. The reason you have those experiences is different than the reasons why some other people may have those experiences. Some people, and again, realize that, as many have said, you did not, as an all knowing being, we'll just say it like that, you did not trip over your own feet and find yourself within physical reality. Whoops, how did I get here? Correct? You inserted yourself into the experience just like in a very knowing way. Let's say 200 years ago, you landed on the eastern shore of South America and you were going to walk across the jungle to the other side of the continent, right? You were ambitious. You were self confident. You had a few people there with you. You had what you thought were all the supplies you needed, and you headed into this unknown area to explore. And while you were in there, you had many trials and tribulations, yes? But you had the resources, if you dug deep enough, to continue along the way. So you've done something quite similar here. You've decided to explore an experience where you, in effect, have cut yourself off from your resources. And but you've done it in this time period. Everybody has done it in this time period, understanding that in this time period, you're going to change the game, shall we say. So sometimes a little tap on the shoulder is helpful for somebody. They could turn and go, yes, and they can listen to what's being presented. Sometimes it takes a sledgehammer to the big toe on both feet in order to start to listen to what it is that's there in the background. You understand, of course, in the background, that there is no such thing as a cessation of your existence. You know that this is being played out, that it's being expressed in a particular way. Also, from that vantage point, because you are consciousness, and this does take a certain awareness that that is the truth of who and what you are, to understand these words. But as consciousness, you are open to all experience. You don't judge experience as this experience is better to have than that experience. If you find yourself walking across the street and getting killed by a bus, that to you is a very valid experience. If you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night and there's a house fire around you and you get burned to death, that is a valid experience to you. All of your experiences in that context are valid. From this vantage point, are there some that are much more pleasurable in the way we see it as others? Yes, of course. And of course, there's no need, and the idea has been like this for a number of years, that an expansion of self needs to be difficult. It doesn't necessarily need to be difficult. That, if it is a strong belief, can lend to some of the things that you were talking about, to individuals having very difficult experiences. But the metaphor that the individual called Bashar uses of car engines, and how, with the exception of your automobiles, car engines could be very dirty and they would run pretty much the same. Where now, with the high tolerances that you have in those engines, a little bit of dirt will make it very difficult for that engine to be able to perform the way it's supposed to. So again, that's like all of you. As you get closer and closer to knowing yourself, it becomes easier and easier, shall we say, for you to spot those things that are still holding you back a little bit. And so little things that, let's say, back in the 70s, that would not even have shown up for anybody as something that was difficult because they were too small, will seem quite large for you in this time period. And individuals like yourselves, shall we say, who've moved through a certain amount of that exploration, the small things will seem big. They will seem more challenging because, again, you've cleared away a lot of the bigger stuff. Hello there, sweetheart. How are you? It's nice of you to lend your energy to your father as you are. So we hope that that's helpful for you.
Miles?
Yes, I'm excited. So recently I've heard people with contacting energy gestalts or groups that, for instance, say something like second Earth has been created. And that, and so I don't discount what they're saying, but I have a different viewpoint of it, which is it's all one, but just different perspectives. Is that a reasonable, is there some validity to that perspective?
Yes, it's totally valid, of course. As all of you have done, you will use various ideas that mean something to you to help you within your process. You have an understanding that all versions of your planet exist in this moment. Other individuals may not be quite as familiar with these concepts. They may have a more difficult time with, quote unquote, wrapping their minds around those ideas. So they will utilize information that shows up for them in a way that's just a little bit different, perhaps. Many times, individuals, many times yourselves, you will use the idea of the flow of time in these things. You will tell yourself that something has happened that is an indication of our movement, right? And there is nothing wrong with this. You're not going to totally divest yourself of some concept of time as you do this with yourselves. So all of this, of course, is valid. It also does something else. It provides an opportunity for you. It provides an opportunity for you to stand amidst information that you recognize is helpful to other individuals, that you also recognize is a little different than how you view things, and to be, as you stated, confident in the information that it is that is yours. Again, what we're going to suggest here is that everybody, quote unquote, around you, everybody that shows up for you to help you, all has, in essence, one goal in mind: to help you become more familiar with the information that you contain. There is no aspect of consciousness that contains more information than you do. The trick, if we can use that word, is to become confident in that, to be more familiar with that, and to not be thrown around by other individuals when they offer information. Something that is a tripping point for many of you is you need many times for the information to sound the same when it comes from somebody else versus this other individual or yourself. Many times it's not going to be the same. It may sound different. It really doesn't make any difference. It's what it means to you that's important. Again, the individuals that you're expressing around you, you're creating around you. You're creating the way that they view their experience for your reasons in that moment, for your movement in that moment. So it's your perception of what's going on that's important. As you embrace that, your widened awareness into more of yourself, which will lend itself into trusting yourself more, will be facilitated. So absolutely, your understanding has validity to it.
So my next question has to do with, so everything is all that is. There's nothing in existence that isn't all that is. And therefore, everything in existence is love, and it's also infinite. So, in my view of the world I've constructed, every instant when reality pulses into being, every particle, consciousness unit, atom, cell, molecule, doesn't matter what it is, every person is completely new. And since they all have free will, they all dream, they all strive for value fulfillment, the person that's in my life in this instant is not the person that was in my life the last instant. And in this instant, when they come into my life, they've made another choice out of the infinity of who they are in response to me, reflecting me back to me. Now, they could choose not to participate, but if they participate, it's because they're coming from a place of unconditional love and agreement to follow my script, reflecting me back to me. Do I have that correct? Or do I have that right?
You're close. So they may, on their end of things, and we're going to use this, of course, in language that will be understandable. They may, in that moment, the them of them, choose not to participate. You, because you're the one creating the representation of them within your reality, you may create them there anyway. And there will be action that they have. There will be words that come out of their mouth. There will be a whole variety of things. Now, if you are, maybe we'll use the word astute enough, you can recognize when you're creating an individual in your reality when that individual is not participating in that moment versus when you're creating an individual in your reality when that individual is participating in the moment. Now, that doesn't mean that you are configuring their expression exactly the way that their expression was. You will configure their energy in the way that suits your needs in the moment, regardless of how they're expressing themselves within their reality. It's always your reality you're experiencing. All of the, shall we say, we'll use this word in the moment, all of the real interactions are happening behind the scenes, we'll call it. Then within your physical experience, you take all that activity and you create it for yourself in a way that that wider you knows is perfect in this moment for the quote unquote physically focused you in alignment with the beliefs that you have about your experience still. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Wow. You've really widened my horizon. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. Yeah. I think we're complete. So thank you, Desetu. That was magnificent. Very, very helpful for me. I appreciate it.
And you realize also, as we said earlier, our answer is in effect your answer to yourself.
Yes.
We cannot share information with you without your agreement for us to share this information. And when we do it, the information that we share is the information that you, in effect, want to be shared with yourself. There's always a collaboration that's going on. So you can thank yourself for the answer, if you will.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a little slow on that one, but I'm learning. Yes. So thank you, Miles, and thank you, Desetu.
Well done, Miles. To say too, I have a question. A lot of individuals who I consider to be rather advanced on their spiritual paths, like your channel, Chuck, have recently had, I would say in the last couple of months, not really severe illnesses, but in some cases they are, where people are down for a considerable amount of time. And I personally had the impression that they were, as you indicated earlier, transitioning and their body needed more time or less, I don't know, barriers or impediments to doing what it needed to do. So they were kind of put on their back for a while until they could get everything worked out on their end. And I know it's an individual thing, and like you've been saying, it's all our higher self anyway, and how we need to receive that information. But is I know it's a tool for energies as well as COVID was to work out changes with humanity and social structures and explore different avenues of expression that we choose to. But is the recent information, is that just something that just happened? Am I just paying more attention to it? Or is that more of a concerted effort to have an adjustment period for our biology, be it DNA or cellular structure, mental processes, what have you? Please and thank you.
So you know that you are adept at this type of catching information, correct? You do this frequently. So, yes, we'll draw a parallel to that phenomenon to when somebody leaves their own country to visit another country for, let's say, 3 weeks or a month. You find yourself in a different setting. You are no longer in an environment where you approach your existence in the same way. It allows you a freedom, an ability to explore. When you are ill and you stay at home and you no longer go out into your world, you, in a sense, do something very similar with yourself. You pull yourself away from the regular activities that you have all day long. You allow yourself to, many times, especially if someone's an exploring individual, to drop into a contemplative mood many times. But it's the pulling away from the more common interactions that you have that give you the opportunity to move and shift. And it's not so much about the other individuals, because again, you're going to create your own versions of those other individuals. It's about the shifting that you will allow yourself in an enhanced way to occur while you're not so frequently in contact with the energies of others. Because when you do that, you have a tendency to utilize your energies flowing through your beliefs in more common ways. When you're no longer doing that, you have the opportunity to transition those a little bit, shall we say. So yes, indeed, people do that. And individuals who are on this path do that as well. They do it frequently. What we would suggest is that if in fact they choose that method, like anything else that they do, not to judge themselves in the method. It's a very valid method, in fact.
Thank you. Do
And
you have, I'm
it
sorry.
is certainly easier than finding yourself in a war-torn country. It is certainly easier than finding yourself in a situation where people are dying of starvation around you. It is certainly easier than finding yourself living in a place where everything around you burns down. It's easier than finding yourself in a place where a huge amount of water shows up in whatever way it does, and we'll use these words, wreaks havoc on someone's lives. When individuals do these things, as individuals who have explored themselves, attempt to be gentle with yourselves when you believe you're in challenging situations, because you've moved a great deal already, so you don't find yourselves in those more dramatic situations. You find yourselves in situations that are relatively more stable. And yes, you have challenges within your day, but they're not like many other challenges that are happening around your globe. And this is because of the exploration that you've already participated in. So never be judgmental of the challenges that you have. Just use them for the exploration that they provide you with.
Do you have any insight for Chuck? I know that he has explored this and in many ways, and joyfully so, to get more understanding about his recent transition. Is there something
Well,
else you can add for
Chuck
him?
is aware, actually. He does not need my insight.
Excellent. Thank you. Miles?
Uh, well, this is a golden opportunity, so I don't want to miss this chance. So, it has to do with quote unquote other people, which of course are just there for me. So, I always say that you can't know anything about quote unquote the others. And I think you made a statement similar to that in our conversation. Because what's being reflected back to me is me in my world. So anything I know about others is just my projection. Do I have that right?
Yes, you do. Now,
Okay.
this will change and move as you widen your awareness, and as you become increasingly familiar with you will move to a place where your interactions, you'll be familiar, aware of your interactions with what you would say would be others. But within that process, still, many times, that will be what you experience, what you just spoke of just now. It's going to be projections of your own energy that you will see through symbols that you create in your environment that to you represent other individuals. Absolutely. And you will know. You will know as you start to move, because when you find yourself in experiences, you won't feel the feelings that you once felt, that you would say are unsettling feelings in whatever way, shape, or form. And you will have an insight at the same time about what it is that's transpiring. And we're going to suggest to you to trust yourself as that happens. That will be an important part of your movement. As you trust you to know that you have shifted in certain areas, that will facilitate the rest of your movement.
So, because I know Arla, my view of the world, I've sort of created a dichotomy in a world of oneness, which is that I believe that Arla knows our Sasquatch friends and family. So is she operating at a higher dimension where she literally connects with them outside of this third dimensional reality where we don't know what's going on with anybody else?
Arla, within this group, is a representation of consciousness that carries with it, perhaps we'll say, a different flavor. Arla, as she has expressed with all of you, connects very transparently with the natural world. She is deeply aware of this. She connects very transparently with the natural world. This is the way that information flows to Arla. The deep aspects of you are quite aware of this about the deep aspects of Arla. So you recognize that there is a little bit different movement of energy with Arla than what you find with other sources of information. Arla draws herself to this type of a format to gain information, in part about her own exploration, and at this time, to draw out even more of her natural abilities, to share the information that shows up for her, and to expand into the fullness of what's being shared with her through these aspects of consciousness that she has been familiar with for such a long period of time. So, yes, you're accurately, again, experiencing the difference that Arla brings to the group in her expressing and connecting with consciousness, with it being flavored just a little bit different than many of the others that you've encountered so far.
Now, my made up story is this. Of course, I love Arla, and I love what she says, and the joy that she brings when she shares her insights. So my question is, as I grow in my ability to live out of a heart-centered place, will I then, somewhat like Arla, be able to connect with the people that I say I can't know anything about? But I will be knowing something about them, because at the level of my heart-centered place, I'm actually connecting with them somehow? Is that too confusing?
No, it's not. And in fact, you know about them now. The journey is really in the trust of self, in the relaxation. That will afford you the ability to have that information show up. It's developing to a greater degree, because of course you've already developed it, developing to a greater degree the recognition of the information that you have when you connect with the them of them. Now, realize, of course, that within this experience, ideas, concepts, words, and we're going to use this word, need to be expressed in a particular way, because many of the individuals that you're interacting with in the concept of how this interaction is happening typically still have various ideas about how this is going on. And so the way that the information flows to you from you will come to you in a way that can be shared with other individuals in a way that meets them there, right? Because confusing somebody using language that has no meaning to them in that moment is not helpful to them. So you have to meet them, in essence, you've heard this many times, where they are, to then draw them further into their understanding of themselves. And so again, trust that you have that ability. Many of your experiences now are about trusting yourself as you find yourself in different formats, different environments where other individuals are sharing information in ways that may or may not be similar to you. Because again, this time period of yours, for you, for everybody, is about you becoming familiar with your information and how that information flows through you, how you express that information. Arla's expression will be different. It's about how you express your information. It's about trusting you. Learn to recognize your own feeling.
Wow. Well, this has just been wonderful beyond words, Desatu. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
You're quite welcome.
And Anthony, would you like to do a follow-up question?
Yeah, just give me a sec.
Sure.
Thanks.
Your daughter is way cute, so just thought I'd throw that out there. Just
So
being
very
authentic.
pleasant of that individual, the daughter, to arrive as everybody gathers to share the type of, perhaps we'll call it in the moment, innocent energy that was imparted.
Excellent. And thank you for that ad. As always. Or if Heidi has a question, she could chime in before Anthony is fully prepared. Okay. But thanks for thinking about it. Arla, do you have anything or besides mute?
I just want to thank Desetu for explaining that 2 miles, because it is different in how it, I guess you would say, how it works. But the one thing that I do know from them is that when you are wanting to know more about them and to connect more deeply with them, what will happen as you do that with a pure heart is you will learn about Miles. So much more than you will ever learn about them.
We have nothing to add.
And this will be the last question also. So, but he will get, unless Bruce wishes to chime in.
I'll chime in and just say I'm having a blast.
Thank you so much for adding your energy. You're always a welcome guest.
Thank you.
And it should be the pretty much the same information every Thursday, and then we have a separate one on Friday. I'm sorry, on Sundays. So,
Thank you.
and if you're interested, if you'd like to be added to our messenger group, we can work that out too. So you'll have all the information.
Please do.
I have the power. Oh. And to say too, I was going to say, yeah, it's been a thrill. We love all of the responses that come through in multiple examples. So it really hammers home the intent. At least for me. I can't speak for everybody else who's responding to me, right? So
We, like all of you, do have, in line with our expression tonight, many physical expressions. And we all play this role with each other. There are many times when the information that any of you share is the more expansive voice, leading, shall we say, incarnations of us forward into their deeper understanding. We move back and forth in these roles all the time. We are, in fact, friends in that regard. We explore many places together. We explore many themes together. When
yay.
you collaborate with individuals like this, when you feel the connectivity that you do in groups like this, it's in your terms, a pretty good bet to know that you've done this together in many places and with many different types of themes. This happens more frequently than it does not happen. Just like all of you enjoy collaborating together in groups, self, essence, entity, whatever you'd like to say, consciousness loves to flow and express in that way also.
We're just a unique grouping in this global party. Standing off to the corner, discussing what our desires will reveal.
There are many, many, many groups like yours now. Many groups.
Yay. Well, I'll ask a quick question. I'm assuming that there are no limits to any timelines of any particular event.
Broaden that for us, if you will, please.
Well, let's say you I choose to buy this car versus buying another car.
Correct.
And
When you make
therefore,
that choice, there will be an infinite number of choices an infinite number of probabilities that
Sure.
will flow out from
Okay.
that moment.
Because from our linear speaking, 360 degrees is really about the best that we can conceptualize, when that leaves out so many other directions because physicality is not real.
It's a challenging thing still within your reality to understand the interconnectedness that happens within consciousness. We will just say that.
Thank you. And when Anthony's face pops up again, we will know that he is ready. He's toddler wrangling.
Perhaps the toddler is wrangling Anthony, and he is just unaware.
Would Chuck ever channel, or I'm guessing that any other entity or being which would be interested in being channeled through him would just become part of the collective, which we know as now Desatu. Is that correct in my understanding, or would there be a differentiation for him?
The name, of course, you participated in the choosing. We in essence made it clear to Chuck that the name that was chosen really was without significance. We knew that the name that was chosen would have a particular energy to it, that there would be some contemplation behind it, that would be some meaning to it, that within the moment and to a degree moving forward would, within energy, lend itself to the interaction. But just like all of you, we will use this example. In order for Chuck to have an experience like Arla has, we would connect, maybe we'll say, with that wider portion of Arla in the way that, let's say you took the water of two aquariums and poured them together into another aquarium. We would merge, shall we say, in that way. In our doing that with that aspect of Arla, we could then express those flavors of essence through Chuck. But this would need to be an experience that Chuck desired to have within his flow of experience. We can express to you that as far as what you consider to be his channeling expression, that is unlikely to occur. And it's unlikely to occur because you already have an individual with you who is very adept at all of that, who connects in that way very naturally. It's not necessary. This may be a little cut and dried as a word, but we're going to say it like this, you will understand. Redundancy is not something that consciousness has a leaning towards.
Makes sense to me. It's like kind of having an avatar, because we are the avatar, and there's no sense dealing with the avatar when you can just speak with the creator of the avatar directly to get all of the information that you need.
Many individuals, not so many in this group, but many individuals, as they approach those that are sharing information, will many times ask, well, why don't I do this? Why don't I do that? And those types of questions frequently flow from the singular seeming experience that they're having. They don't understand that in other places, they're exploring all of those things already. There's no need for them to explore that here, because other thems that are just as much them as this them is, shall we say, are already doing that. There's no need for them to do that. Sometimes they see that as a limitation because it can be challenging within your experience to not believe that you're the primary you and the others are somehow secondary yous, when in fact all yous are the primary you.
Yep.
Which it takes a little bit of stretching sometimes.
Yep. From the human perspective, which is ingrained in us, it's hard to understand when you struck out with the bases loaded that you also hit the game-winning hit. And you get to choose which of those which you experience emotionally and mentally by your thoughts and actions and everything else. It's neat. It's neat.
Indeed.
So all of the things that we didn't do don't exist. Ta-da!
Has the daughter been sufficiently wrangled?
My son actually.
Yes.
Everyone thinks he's a girl, but yeah.
The energy of the lack of a need to dominate, the lack of the need to control, the strong expression of intuition and connectiveness imparts that energy to that particular individual.
So does that mean balanced energy?
Very.
It's good. Good.
And thanks for the correction, Anthony.
There was a question, my friend. No?
It's
Well,
up-
I mean, if nobody else wants to ask, I can ask.
You're wrapping it up right here.
All right. Personal question. All right.
Indeed.
All right. Since that was the topic that came up synchronistically, any advice for me as a parent?
Allow your children their exploration. It can be difficult within this physical reality to still not hold on to some vestiges of, because you have been on the planet in terms of time longer, you have had more experiences, so you think, that your guidance, and this is not meant to be demeaning in any way, shape, or form, your guidance is necessary. For individuals of your son's age, their internal guidance is quite accurate. They may make choices understanding the probabilities that they are stimulating that you may not see. However, you have the capability, if you are free of anxiety, if you are free of worry, if you are free of trepidation, if you in that moment trust yourself totally, and through that you trust them totally, then you will be able to allow them their exploration without trepidation. They will not make mistakes. Although sometimes it may seem like a challenge comes up that may not have been necessary. Again, realize that the activities that show up for you will be for your benefit. As a parent, as an individual who has expressed themselves physically, as an individual who, within the idea of time and a history, may still have some memory of how things have been, may still have some vestiges of the world flows the way it does, regardless of what you're doing, which does not happen. There can be some hesitation sometimes when younger individuals express themselves in ways that, from those places, you think might be a little bit, we'll just use the word challenging in their lives in a variety of ways. But attempt to trust them. Attempt to trust yourself, because what's happening in that, and you've, we'll say, utilized them in that role very effectively for yourself. You've, in your desire to become so familiar with you, excuse us, you have aligned yourself with individuals who will not hide themselves from themselves as they move within the idea of time into this expression of physical reality. They will not hide themselves as many of us did. And because you have a deep desire to understand who and what you are, you've utilized this experience for many reasons, but in this way, to aid you in trusting yourself, to aid you in acquiring that deeper understanding of how it is you configure your reality. And you're doing it in concert with them. So you chose this method not to once again focus on what happens if I don't utilize the old ideas, but to give you the opportunities in collaboration with them to allow yourself the doorways, to let the information and the assuredness that you have within you to become an increasingly part in your experience. Don't worry about what may happen with them. And the more you trust in you, you're the key. The more you trust in you, because again, they're here in that context to help your journey out. You don't need to worry about them and helping their journey out. They see a very wide spectrum of things. Even though you've focused on, shall we say, this exploration, and you've done quite well with it, it's natural for them. It's becoming that for you. Trust in you. Trust that it's not the world that creates your or their experience for them. And in the context of your experience, they may, we'll use the word again, behind the scenes, in that area of consciousness where you're actually all directly interacting, they may create a particular scenario within physical existence. You may alter that scenario in line with whatever challenges you have yet in the area of trust, in the area of understanding that you're the one that configures consciousness to have your experience. Now, within that, if you feel in the moment that you need to take actions that are a little bit more alignment with how things have been viewed, please do that. To not do that will bring challenges to you that are unnecessary. So be honest with yourself, trust yourself to the degree that you actually can. And if you need to utilize other ways of doing things, then do those. Utilize those ways. But understand that it's them helping you in the journey that you've chosen, in the exploration of yourself that you so very much want to participate in. So we'll leave you with that right now. And even though our MC, he is as he returns, we would express that again, as we did the last time, that we enjoy these interactions very deeply. It is relatively uncommon for us to be able to express ourselves with thinner filters, shall we say. And so it's an experience that is quite pleasant to us. We enjoy it immensely. And this group of individuals facilitates that. Tonight's energy facilitates that. So we appreciate that. So thank all of you for allowing us that opportunity.
I think you speak for all of us to say too. Thank you. Appreciate your insights and your energy and helping to bring us all together for this co-creation. Unless anyone has anything else, we will bid him adieu and return to our normal program. And of course, Chuck already knows this, but the lack of difference between his channeling state and his normal state is freaking incredible to me. But
Well, I think I told you this story, and it was about, I think it was 15 years ago, something like that. And I was weighing what direction I wanted to take. Did I want to explore my connection with me and what I could bring forward in my day-to-day experience as much as I possibly could, or did I want to explore channeling in a very deep way? And neither one well, they were both happening, of course, but to observe it in a more traditional way, I didn't make a choice right back then, right? And then once I started doing this, I realized that it actually wasn't a choice. It's both. That's what's going on, So yeah.
Yep.
Which really is happening with everybody,
Indeed. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful process that we've created and immersed ourselves in. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Chuck before I stop the video and then we can start again?
I think you hit it out of the park tonight, Chuck. It was just fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Miles. I really appreciate you guys in this context. When Ray first invited me to participate with you guys, I've been channeling with a group of close friends of mine that I'd been on an exploration with. We shared, the same source of exploration for a long period of time, for 15, 20 years. And so I felt very comfortable with those guys. And so you guys provided me that initial, month or whatever it was, an opportunity actually to realize that I had moved further than I thought that I had. It was quite nice. I felt quite comfortable with all you guys and quite comfortable with sharing. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't realized changes, in that interaction. A deepening of the interaction, and a deepening in my day-to-day experience as well, because of course all that's occurred. But you guys were quite participating with all of you guys was quite facilitating of that. So I appreciate that.
And I've always been in awe of all of the deep connections that are interwoven between all of the people who were in the group. It was a unique experience to have that kind of sharing in such a synchronous way.
What's interesting is that when we did one of the, what do we call them? When we had all the channelers come together.
Yeah, the Channeling Expo.
Yeah, the Channeling Expo. When we did one of those, I had altered my state to a place where I wanted to connect with the sources of each of the channels. And it was effective, but it meant that I was ineffective as a channeler at that time, because I could not remember when somebody asked a question, the first 3, 4, 5 seconds of the question was there. But if they continued then and built on that, I couldn't remember anything. But what happened that whole evening is that as each individual expressed themselves, I tied very deeply into the source of where their information was flowing from, and I could feel the connection and the personality, maybe we'll say, of both the channel and the source. And so that was my experience that night.
That was the first one.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
I
that's the same thing I had.
I could not remember what somebody had physically said if they had gone beyond just a couple seconds of mentioning something. I was focusing on on the energy in those first couple seconds. And then if they continued and built on it, which almost everybody did, I lost it because I was focusing out there and I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
And so the answers that I gave had to do with just information that was showing up for me. I don't even know if it had any context to what they actually asked.
yeah, it seemed to me like as soon as the entity started to form an answer, then I kind of tapped into where they were getting their information and why they were saying it and why they were saying it this way. And it was amazing, from my point of view, but I could not bring any of that back to the physical. I had to be well, I say that, my own barrier I'm setting up here. But at that time, I was not able in that simultaneous time to bring all of that information back. And it would have blown my mind in more ways than I think it
Well, I
was
think the
safe.
thing is that, when we do all those things, when we dream, whatever, we have to translate all that into information that makes sense to us here. And it may have been just advantageous of you not to try to translate, because in the translation, maybe what you did was you would have altered the energy enough, remembered that translation instead of the experience, which
Yeah,
maybe it sounds like to me is not what you actually wanted to do.
no, because it was very in depth. It would be like, okay, because of these 6 events that happened, this is why they are framing their question and why this is what the energy is, and this is a little bit more in line with what they want, but the energy will work itself out. And all of these variables were just downloaded to me. And it was like, holy crap, I hope I'm not picked to answer this question because I'm enamored with everything else that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm thinking that it almost doesn't really matter what the information is because
Yeah.
when the channel is established and you feel the vibration of the channel, it reminds you of that level of your own vibration. And in the constant communion you're having as they're unfolding whatever information comes out, it's just that chance to sit with that vibration a long enough time to begin to release other versions of yourself while you sink into this newer version, not newer, but this. And that's a wonderful opportunity of immersion, I find.
Yeah. And
Right.
that's, the me that sits on my shoulder now, as I'm a little bit more in the forefront, is totally in, we'll just call it agreement with what you just said. Especially with individuals who've explored to a depth of themselves, that this is primarily what these situations afford.
Yep.
Is for you to step forward in that moment and for it to be recognized.
And if I might, and one of the reasons I enjoyed Arla's expression because I don't normally attune to that kind of energy, and that was a special treat. So
Yeah.
thank.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's a special energy, that's for sure.
It's interesting because there's a couple people within the forum that have shown up in the forum that are a little like Arla in that their energy is different. They have a different flavor to them in the way that they like to express energy. And so it is nice because those deeper us's understand those flavors. And so it gives us the opportunity, as Bruce was just saying, for this version of us now to become familiar with those flavors. And of course, Arla does a fantastic job at expressing that particular flavor of consciousness.
Cool. Well, hang on, everyone. I'm going to stop the video and
Wait, before you do that, and
Okay.
now Chuck Disettu has to channel their highest self through them than through you. That would be interesting. I'd like to go there too.
Well, it would still be to say to, right?
Well,
It's a bridge. I mean, well, he can answer for that.
Sure, my understanding of that, as I've become more comfortable with all this, is that um, you know there's the metaphor of peeling the onion back and layers on layers on layers, but that's an expression that makes sense here. Once that wider awareness is had, the tapping in happens instantaneously to any place in consciousness. It's not that you actually have to reach into another version of you. You just are that other version of you.
Yes.
And it was interesting that the Setu said that I got the impression you were not interested or going to channel anything else, that was you were putting all your chips into Setu.
Well, it's one of the things that I recognized for the past 2 years, I guess it's been something like that, is that wider version of me has involved itself in the experience that I utilized Arla's deeper self as a potential experience of, where it involved itself with a wider aspect of consciousness, merged with it so that I could have the experience of those energies. I could be influenced by a different way of looking at how energy could flow into this experience through a different type of a phenomenon, which is expressed as extraterrestrial individuals, right? There's one of those flavors that utilizes that particular methodology to share information through. Arla gains information primarily through the wind, through the earth, through the animals, those types of things. Other individuals gain information, even though it all flows from consciousness, the manner in which it shows up is different. Other individuals get information through extraterrestrials of various places, from various dimensions. They're all expressions of us, but it's the manner in which they get information. Some individuals connect very deeply with their children. Children will say things that to those of us that aren't aligned in that way. Now, of course, we're all explorers, so we understand that there's deeper information when children say stuff that, we'll just use this term, the typical adult would say it's just their imagination or whatever. Some individuals hear information just like Seth shared it, or just like Bashar shared it, or whatever, through their kids or through somebody else's kids, right? It's completely different. There's a variety of flavors, shall we say, of how people, some individuals, Charlie Manson was an example of this, as was on the other end of the spectrum, Joan of Arc, individuals who actually audibly hear information. They hear voices, right? From out of the blue, sometimes from individuals, sometimes from animals, sometimes from a tree. Doesn't matter. But they audibly hear the information, right? They've always been around. So most of the time, they're considered to be, they've lost their marbles, right? Look at that individual. They're talking to the building, or they're talking to that goat, like the goat's actually talking to them. The goat is, well, it's not the goat. It's the consciousness that's expressing through the goat in a way that they actually hear. There's many ways that information is shared. There's many flavors to how that occurs. And so I got the opportunity to understand the extraterrestrial flavor in a very deep way over the past 2 years. Now it feels different to me.
Yep.
the way that has been my natural flow, the way that information has normally shown up for me is once again at the forefront, but it's broader now than what it was before. And I also understand the validity of getting information through extraterrestrials. Understand that whole process in a way that I never understood it before. I did the same thing when I explored Gaudiya Vaishnavism for a longer period of time, 6 years, to gain. My methodology involves experience in a very deep way. It brings me in an awareness of a subject matter that I wouldn't have trying to view it from the outside. So I have a tendency to do that.
Lucky us.
Lucky
And
me.
I'm gonna write go ahead and stop the recording, and
Sounds
thank
good.
you very much for coming in, Chuck, and to say
Oh,
too,
guys,
it was an
thank all
awesome.
you guys.
Thank you.
It's great.